All right, we're going to talk a little bit about machine tuning here today. So what is machine tuning and why is it important? So when you start tattooing, of course, the main tool that you're going to be using is going to be a machine. So now the main groups, of course, there's going to be coil or rotary. There was some pneumatics. I don't know if anybody's really using pneuma machines anymore, but various industry sort of standard is going to be rotary or coil. So when you're talking about tuning, what exactly is it and why do you need to know how to do it? So if you want to become a good tattoo artist, one of the first things that you're going to need to know is that each one of these machines is going to be more suited to a certain job than another. So for example, this machine here, this machine is going to be much better as a liner than it is a shader. Now, the problem is going to come in here, first of all, is that when you order some machines off some sites, is either the builder won't tell you what it's for, or they might not know what it's for, or maybe you try and buy it for one thing and it's not as good suited for that. Now this is a really great example of that sort of vein. Now when I bought this machine, this builder said that this was a liner, best liner in the world, blah, blah, blah. So when I bought this, I was super stoked. I think I probably spent $700 on this machine. And then when it came, I didn't like it. I kind of played around with it a little bit, but I never liked it. It just didn't line for me correctly. I just didn't find that this was a good machine for me. So later in my career, when I actually started learning more about tuning and started getting into more of the tuning trade, is I realized that this frame, in my opinion, was better suited as a shader or a color packer rather than a liner. So what I did is I actually gutted the machine and I retuned it as a shader, and it actually worked great. I actually used this as a shader color packer for quite a few years, and I loved it. This thing ran like an old Cadillac. It was a beautiful machine after that. So when you're talking about different machines, one of the things that you need to know is what is this machine for and what am I going to be using it for? And then of course there's opinion. Now let's go back to this guy for example. So when this guy said this is the best liner in the world, probably he was referring to how he tattoos. That would be my guess. I would think that he probably just tattoos a little bit slower and more methodical, whereas when I was tattooing, maybe I was going a little bit quicker, my hand speed was a little bit different. So when he built this, he built it for the way that he actually tattoos. So for him, it was perfect, but then when I got it, it wasn't perfect. So when we're going to be talking about some preference, that's going to make things a little bit more murky. So one of the things when we talk about tuning is we're going to have to figure out, okay, what is this machine for? Like, what is this frame better suited as? And then how do we get this frame to run properly for what it is suited as? And then of course after that, how are we going to make this machine run so that it runs smoothly? So now that's kind of a broad spectrum, but that's what we're doing when we're talking about tuning. Is if you say, okay, well, can you, like, if somebody random just came up and said, hey, can you tune this machine for me? Okay, well, probably not, because first of all, I don't know how you tattoo. I don't know, I might not have ever seen how you work. So if you're just to like shove this into my hand and say, here, tune this, I might not be able to do that just because, first of all, I don't know your preference. So there's been plenty of good tattoo artists through the years that have been very well renowned, and they actually use Paul Booth was a great example. I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that Paul Booth preferred to use a shader or his liner for shading. His hand speed must have just been really fast, and just the way that he started, he just decided that that was more comfortable for him. So, and of course, if it's, if you're getting into magazines with your product when it's finished, obviously it's not wrong, right? But there's going to be a few sort of industry standards for starting points when you're talking about tuning. So one of the things that we're going to look at here when we start talking about tuning is what exactly is this machine that I'm looking at? Like, what is this machine built for versus what would this machine be built for? And then how do I properly build this machine out so that it'll function with what it's for? So say a great example is the difference between an SUV or a Ferrari. Now each one is going to have a different task and it's going to be suited for a different thing. So like you could probably tow your boat with a Ferrari, but it's probably better that you don't put a boat hitch on your Ferrari. It's probably better that you use your SUV for that. But then in the same regard, you probably don't really need to put carbon fiber hood onto your SUV because this thing is weighs 1,000,000 pounds anyway. So, you know, putting a couple of high performance parts on your SUV is probably not really going to make a lot of sense. So a tattoo machine is the very same thing. So each one of these things, some of these are SUVs and some of them are Ferraris. So what you want to do is you want to figure out what is the job that I'm trying to do. So if you're going to be pulling a boat, then you're going to figure out, okay, well then which one of these is going to pull my boat best? Because when you get into needles, of course, some are boats and some aren't. So when you talk about tattooing or tuning, sorry, that's a couple of the questions that you're going to have to ask. And how we're going to learn that is going to be a process that we're going to break down. But we're going to go for some industry standards first to kind of give you a starting point of the majority of tattoo artists of how they use. So I'm not going to show you how to tune a liner and set it up as a shader because it's weird, and even though Paul Booth might do it, we're just not going to do that. We're going to show you how to set up a liner as a liner, how to recognize a liner as a liner versus a shader, and then how to properly kit these out so that when you set your machine up, the parts that you're putting into it are for what you're trying to do with it. And then lastly, you want that machine to actually function correctly. So say you build this machine up, oh hey, this is a liner, so I'm going to put liner stuff into it. It's all built up like a liner, and then you plug it in and it runs like dog crap. Well, that's not very groovy. So then what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and make this machine so that it runs butter soft. So that's basically all those things are sort of the section of tuning and what is it and how are you going to do that. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to actually start breaking some of these machines down. We'll start with coil machines because coil machines are cool, and it's just a really neat area of tattoo history, so it's good to learn it, but the fundamentals sort of overlap. So these rotaries require very little tuning, but the fundamentals of how these are designed and how they run and how they'll work are going to be very similar to a coil machine. So if you understand a coil machine, your understanding of your rotary is going to get much better. And when you go to pick a rotary or you go to try and swap some of these parts out on your rotary or your coil, you're just going to have a way better understanding of what you're trying to do. So you're a lot more likely to actually achieve what you're trying to do. And then of course your end result's going to be better because once you buy these machines and you set them up correctly in the right way that the machine wants to be set up for, and then you use it for what you're trying to do, of course your tattoos are just going to get infinitely better because you're not trying to drive a nail with a shoe, for example, or a rock. You know, like you can hit a nail into a piece of wood with a rock, but it's not going to be as awesome as using a hammer. So these are the same. So we're going to try and make sure that you understand what you're trying to do and then how to set them up so they do what they're supposed to do. And then at the end of the day, they're going to run like they should. And then that's just going to make your tattoos a whole bunch better. All right, so let's break it down and get into that next.